So welcome all, and Jayashree and Sumitra, if you'd like to turn on your video, that would be wonderful. We welcome everyone, all attendees that are joining us today to this New Perspectives program. And many of you who've been following us on New Perspectives on Saturday know that we've just completed part one of our series, The Soul and Its Evolutionary Journey, which was really focused on preparing for the soul's entry into embodied life. And we had wonderful speakers, and they're all available on our knowledge bank. But today, Dr. Sumitra Basu opens part two, which is the growth of development of the soul, with a talk on reincarnation and karma. So we are thrilled to have you here today, Dr. Basu, and opening this very important second part of a three-part series. We also have Jayashree with us today. We invited all panelists that were able to make it today, so we may have a few joining us, but Jayashree will be speaking on September 30th for growth of the psychic consciousness. Welcome, Jayashree, who is an integral part of our community here at LaGrasse and has taught courses and has been on New Perspectives before. And we'll also have James Anderson, Awakening the Soul, Matthew Andrews, who is the AVI USA president, who will speak on the role of ordeals and difficulties. I'll speak on the soul's swabhava and its expression in life. And then we'll end the series on October 14th. We'll end part two, Ayurveda's perspective on the soul. And we'll have Kashyapa Fisher, who has joined us before, speak on that. So you all know Dr. Sumitra Basu, and again, he has generously given of his time and his knowledge and his wisdom and his experience on many of our New Perspective webinars. He is a psychiatrist working with consciousness paradigms and conducts workshops on personal growth, and is founder and editor of Namaha, Journal of Integral Health. He's also authored the book Integral Health, and he's deeply interested in the interplay of Aurobindonian metaphysics and mental health. He has developed a module of consciousness-based psychology, and along with Dr. Michael Miovich out of Boston, has authored a book on this topic, which is currently available. And I believe, and maybe you can inform us better, Dr. Basu, that that book is now available on Amazon, or if not, how our participants might be able to access that book. But we have it here. It's an excellent book. And Dr. Basu will be working with Aro University and the students there on many of the topics and subjects that are involved in this book. So with that, Dr. Basu, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to you. And once again, we appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you all for participating, who are participating, and thank you all who have organized LaGrasse Center, Radhe and Vladimir, especially. So today's topic on focusing on rebirth and karma is a very important topic in Sri Aurobindo's metaphysics, and requires a special knowledge, because Sri Aurobindo's concept of karma is different from all others, and Sri Aurobindo's concept of rebirth is totally different from all other views. Rebirth is seen not as an individualistic phenomena, but as a cosmic phenomena and an evolutionary phenomenon. It's part of a cosmic and part of an evolutionary phenomenon. And the old idea of rebirth, reincarnation, suffers more from individualism. It is not individualistic. As we will show, we will go to the PowerPoint presentation and I will show you. And about karma also, Sri Aurobindo's concept is totally different, and for which you will see that the past life therapists, which are today very available today and are very popular today, are not the kind of things that fit with this scheme. Because for every life, a new personality is made. For every life, a completely new personality is made along with the subconscious, in tune with the climate, with the times, with the historical perspective, in tune with all that. A new personality is made every time. So it's not a repetition of the old. Nothing is repeated from the old. So every time there's a new personality with a new subconscious that is formed. And therefore the old has little value, because in our perspective, we have to always go forwards. But I will go to the PowerPoint presentation directly.
Yeah.
So the law of karma exists in some form or other in different cultures. And Sri Aurobindo did not believe in the oversimplified notion of karma, which subscribes punishments for the bad and rewards for the good for actions in the present or past life. So he didn't believe in this oversimplified notion. Rather, he explains that it is the sole principle that willfully chooses an array of experiences in spiraling growth through lives. So it is the sole principle that willfully chooses different experiences in different lives, spiraling through different lives. The chain of karma only binds the movement of the nature and not the soul. The chain of karma doesn't bind the soul. It only binds the movement of nature. So that is important. That is important. So you see that Sri Aurobindo begins with his theory of karma in a very different way. He doesn't believe in the canings for the bad and chocolates for the good. He explains that it is a sole principle which gathers experiences through different lives. And the chain of karma binds the movement of nature, not the soul. Next slide. So the mother explains to a question whether the divine punished injustice. The mother explained that the divine did not see the things the human beings as the human beings did. You see that in Tirupati, we have in India, the god Balaji, the god Narayana, he is blindfolded. Why he is blindfolded? When you are ushered in front of him, you don't see his eyes. He is blindfolded. Because at that moment when one stands before him, his past or present, his virtues or vices don't matter at all. At that moment, if one is sincere, one will get what one wants. That is the divine grace. That is why Lord Balaji is blindfolded. So the divine is non-judgmental. Divine is actually non-judgmental. All actions in themselves carry their own fruits and consequences. According to his nature, the action brings one closer to the divine, or it keeps one farther away from the divine. That alone is important. Whether the nature of the work which will bring you closer to the divine or which will shift you away from the divine, that is important. Otherwise, the divine is perfectly non-judgmental. Next one. Next slide. And Sri Aurobindo did not recommend an expenditure of time and energy to resolve karmic conflicts of the past lives, even when they had carryover effects, as each new manifestation actually presents a new personality in accordance with the time spirit. In accordance with the time spirit, a new personality is made every time. So you don't have to spend so much time and energy on past karmic conflicts. If the memories of past personalities come up itself, there is something important to give a clue to the nature of the personality, but the rest is of little use. In fact, instead of trying to resolve past karmic conflicts by past life regressive therapies, Sri Aurobindo recommended a superconscious way to deal with them. We'll discuss that. Sri Aurobindo recommended a superconscious way to deal with the karmic conflicts, not by just resolving past karmic conflicts, because they don't have any effects on this life like that. Next slide. Vladimir. So new points to deal with karma. The 5 important steps in dealing with the past karmas. The first, the physical mind. First is the physical mind, because the physical mind is a mind that is obsessed with ruminating trivial things, always ruminating the same thing again and again and again and again. We always go on ruminating the same small trivial things again and again. So the physical mind has to be freed from the clutches of repetitive habitual thought patterns. That is the first movement. The first movement is of the physical mind. The physical mind has to be free. Otherwise, it is difficult to work upon. The physical mind is always obsessed with trivialities of life. In the morning, when we go out of house, whether we have charged our cell phone, whether you have locked the house properly, whether you have switched off the geyser, all these small things go on and on and on. So first important thing, that the physical mind has to be worked upon to free it from the clutches of the repetitive habitual thought patterns. And secondly, the individual will, you see, between the eyebrows, when we concentrate between the eyebrows to increase the individual will. But instead of emphasizing on the individual will, when we concentrate between the eyebrows to link the individual will with the divine will, that is a much better thing to do. So the individual will has to be aligned with the divine will. It has to be aligned with the eternal will. The individual will has to be given up to the eternal will. So remember, when we are concentrating between the eyebrows, in the chakra between the eyebrows, on the forehead chakra, instead of emphasizing on increasing one's willpower, we have to concentrate there to give that willpower to the divine willpower. And thirdly, the alignment of the individual will with the divine will can be consolidated only. You see, it needs a consolidation. And that consolidation can only happen if the ego is repressed by the psychic being. And the psychic being is a projection of the Jivatma. So the alignment of the individual will with the divine will can be consolidated if the ego is repressed by a 4th-dimensional principle of the psychic being, which is in the 4th dimension, and which is a projection of the Jivatma, or the central, which is the central being, or the undying self in the manifestation. So that is important. Next slide. And identification with the undying self or Jivatma. One has to identify not only with the psychic being, but one has to identify with the Jivatma, so that the yoke imposed by birth in time, one is free from that. One is free from the yoke imposed by birth in time, and free one from the soul's compound debt accumulated to numberless lives. From the soul's compound debt accumulated to numberless lives. So an identification with the Jivatma actually paves the way. After you have identified with the psychic being, one has to identify with the Jivatma. To get over the karmic conflicts, you have to identify with the Jivatma. Then only the yoke imposed by birth in time, that can be overcome. Yet that is a rider. The Jivan Mukta, one who is free from everything, who has earned liberation. The Jivan Mukta is one who has earned liberation from all bonds. Is he bound by past deeds? Is the Jivan Mukta bound by past deeds? The Mukti or liberation prevents one's future deeds. This is Sri Aurobindo said in the Isha Upanishad. In a conversation in the Isha Upanishad, he says this, that Mukti prevents one's future deeds from creating bondage. Liberation prevents one's future deeds from creating bondage. Identifying with the Jivatma prevents one's future deeds from creating bondage. But what are the past deeds which have already created bondage? What are the past deeds? The future deeds, you are assured, when you are identified with the Jivatma, the future deeds will no longer create bondage. But what of the past needs which created bondage? Prakriti attached to this Jivatma must be allowed to work out these effects. The nature attached to the Jivatma must be allowed to work out those effects. Otherwise, the chain of causation is snapped and the whole economy of the nature is disturbed and thrown into chaos. So that Sri Aurobindo says it very beautifully, that for the future, when you identify with the Jivatma, the future is free. But for the past, one has to work out the past. One has to work out the burden of the past. Of course, the burden will fall away when one has identified with Jivatma. The yoke imposed by birth in time is overcome. So that is a indication of the divine grace that works. Next one, next slide. And fifthly, the full and creative freedom from the past comes with the transformation of life, which has not been done yet, which is envisaged. So it is not enough that we are free from past karmas by never being born again. So the old formula was not to be born again, to be free from past karmas, not to be born again. But Sri Aurobindo says it is more important to conceive of a higher life free of karmic effects. Higher life free of karmic effects, where there will be not a recurrence of the past karmas. So instead of not being born again, which was the dictum all along in India, people used to say, I don't want to be born again. When I was a small child and there was no television in India and elderly people were sitting all alone, lonely in their houses after retirement, if I would ask them, what are you thinking? 9 times out of 10, they would say, next life I should not be born again. But now, of course, there is television and there are the soap operas, so they don't say this thing. They want to see the next episode on the TV. But at that time, people used to say that. So that concept was that, not to be born again, to be free from karmas. But Sri Aurobindo doesn't say that. He tells of a life which will be free from the karmic effects, when there will not be a recurrence of the past karmas. This can, of course, only be guaranteed by a transformed supramental existence. So even the bodily transformation would lead to a supreme spiritual rebirth and free us from all possibilities of nature's common activity of cause and effect. So only in a transformed supramental existence we can be free from all karmic effects. So that is still far away. Still we have to move towards that. There's a hope where we have to move towards that, but it's still far away. Next one, next slide. So it is the soul personality or psychic being, which Sri Aurobindo describes as a soul in his evolutionary poise, that survives the lifespan. Now, what survives the lifespan? A lifespan is survived by the psychic being. The memory traces of the depressed imprints in a lifetime are preserved in the psychic being. The psychic being carries the depressed imprints of one's lifetime. Not all. All memories are not carried by the psychic being. Most of the memories go back to the cosmic waste paper basket. Only those who leave the deepest imprints, deepest emotional imprints, or something that has connected with this, something that is connected with the soul, something that is connected with divinity, or something that is a changing point in life. Something like that. When you first stood in front of the Samadhi at Pondicherry, or when you first saw a Himalayan peak, the feeling you got, those kind of feelings, those kind of intense moments are relived, the memory traces are kept, and they outlast the ordinary life of an individual. The ordinary life of an individual is surpassed by the psychic being, by the memory traces of the deepest imprints in a lifetime, to act as templates to future life, so that each life doesn't start from a zero or blank. So each life doesn't start from a zero or blank, but is in continuity with the cosmic memory. This is very important to understand. The psychic being gives the continuity to life. The soul gives the continuity to life. Otherwise, between lives, there is no continuity unless you accept the soul. So the soul carries the deepest imprints of life, and they are stored in the cosmic memory. They are stored in the cosmic memory as memory traces, and each new life starts from having seeds from there. So it doesn't start from a zero and blank, but it is in continuity with the cosmic memory. If this continuity was not there, then we would not be in continuity with the cosmic consciousness. We would never manifest a global unity. If this continuity was not there, we would all be individuals, free from each other. We would never manifest a global unity. Never we would have shared universal values. Life would be aberrant and isolated, freak, incapable of growth. So this is very important. The soul is very important. That is why our science might tell you that they don't understand the soul, but then in metaphysics, the soul is most important thing. The next slide. The psychic moments are unforgettable moments of life when the consciousness is intense, luminous, strong, active, powerful, and sometimes turning points in life that have changed the directions of one's life. But these memories come in flashes. These memories are come in flashes. You remember a set of circumstances at one moment of life. You see, when one remembers, psychic memory is a memory which one can remember. A psychic memory is a memory which one can remember again. And when you remember one moment of life, particularly of the inner emotion, of the consciousness that acted at that moment. Just like mother remembered that one word, one phrase she told when she was in her past life. She had one of her past lives was Queen Elizabeth I, and Queen Elizabeth I's famous one of her most famous words were when she was dying. A group of peasants came to meet her, and she was told not to meet them because she was ill. She would have died. She would have died if she went to meet them. But she insisted that they are my subjects. I shall meet them. And she told, we shall die afterwards. So mother remembered this slide, just this slide. So like that, one moment of life is remembered. And that passes into consciousness along with some associations with all that was around you. Perhaps a word spoken, a phrase heard. But what was most important was the soul in which you are. For that indeed remains clearly engraved. The poise of the soul in which you are at that time, that is important. So that poise of the soul which remembers, that is important. And that is remembered in the present life. If something of the psychic memory comes, that is remembered. That poise, the poise of the soul which remembered. The next slide. So it is not spectacular memories. It is not fantastic memories. It is not what you call typical novel memories or media rich memories that you remember. Your psychic memories are just flashes that you remember. But of course, people who remember big things, dramatic things, that is a value in that. I will come to that. But first, there are three basic principles of rebirth in the Aurobindonian system. One is the old idea of rebirth actually aids by excessive individualism. One enters into birth not in a separate life, but in the life of the whole. And therefore, it is the life of the whole. The Sri Aurobindo's worldview gives more importance to the future, to a greater life to which we are all evolving. So it is not individualistic. It is not strictly individualistic. It is cosmic in character. Because you see, the seed memories remain in the cosmic consciousness, from where they are going to influence many lives, or one life, or many lives. The cosmic, you see, as a person passes away, his psychic being carries the memories which are kept as memory templates in the cosmic consciousness, and these memory templates can influence afterwards in future many lives at many eras, not only one life. Of course, sometimes a composite set of memories will go to one person, but most often these memories go to different persons. So it is a very cosmic phenomenon. And Sri Aurobindo explains certainly the subconscious is formed for this life only, and is not carried by the soul from one life to another. The subconscious is not carried by the soul from one life to another. So if it is only the essence of the past life that is activized in the being, not the particular memories, but the essence of the past life that is activized in the being. And rebirth implies a secret soul continuity and not a brute succession of bodies. Rebirth doesn't include a brute succession of bodies. So you see one body and you say that this person must be that person in the last birth. He has the same type of body. It is not like that. It's a question of the soul. It's not a question of the body. Next slide. The psychic, when it departs from the body, shedding the mental and the vital on his way to his resting place, carries with his heart of experience not the physical events, not the vital movements, not the mental movements, not the capacities or characters, but something essential that is gathered from all of them, which might be called the divine element, which is the permanent addition. It is that helps in the growth towards the divine. When the psychic being departs, it doesn't carry everything. It carries the divine element for which the rest existed, which is the permanent addition. For example, the divine element in the magnanimity of the warrior that is expressed itself in his loyalty, nobility, high courage. So these are the kind of thing. This is the kind of divine element. The divine element in the magnanimity of the warrior, or the harmonious mentality, generous vitality expressed in them of the musician, now that remains in a new harmony of character, may find a new expression. So it is always the divine element that is a permanent addition. Next slide. Essence of these truth experiences that are carried from life to life exist as memory transcripts in the cosmic consciousness to influence future lives in many ways. So whatever the psychic being carries are existing as memory transcripts in the cosmic consciousness, and they influence the future lives in many, many ways. Thus, very deep musical or mystical transcripts may be transmitted to one or more receptive individuals scattered in space and time. Like many receptive musicians could imbibe Beethoven's music. It's like that. So there are deep musical transcripts may be transmitted to one or more individuals who are receptive, and they're scattered in space and time. Or of course, a more composite transcript may be transferred at birth to an individual. A more composite transcript can be transferred at birth to an individual. Thus, rebirth in Aurobindonian terms is a cosmic phenomenon and involves transmission of significant and meaningful seed memories stored in the psychic being that may be transferred to one or more individuals. It does not mean that a certain X is necessarily born as a certain Y, that Tom is born as Harry. It's not like that. Tom is not born like Harry. It is the seed memories in the psychic being which are stored in the cosmic consciousness and which in future is going to influence not only one life but many lives together. Of course, a composite transcript can be transferred to one single individual. That is rare, but that happens. But usually what happens is that these memory traces go to receptive individuals scattered in time and space. Next slide. And the progress of the psychic being happens in life itself and not between lives. Then this is very important. This is important because the earth is important. The earth consciousness is important. The consciousness of the earth is very important because in the consciousness of the earth that the psychic being progresses. It doesn't progress between lives. It goes at a rest and there. It comes down again in a new body, brings with it all results of its progress. So it goes into a kind of rest after death for assimilation, where the results of the progress accomplished during his active existence is worked out. Where the result of the progress accomplished during his active existence is worked out. And it comes down again in a new body, bringing it with all the results of his progress. And an advanced stage even chooses the environment and the kind of body and kind of life it will live. So in very advanced stages, it chooses the environment. The psychic being can choose the environment and the kind of life that it wants. It is not going to be mechanical. Of course, it is mechanical in many cases, but in many cases, in advanced cases, it is not mechanical. The psychic being chooses the life that it wants. And in very, very advanced cases, the psychic being, before leaving the body, can decide what kind of life it will have in the next incarnation. So that is very exceptional. In very advanced cases, the psychic being, before leaving the body, can decide the next life. This type of life I will enjoy in the next birth. So this is important, that the psychic being takes rest between lives. It is only on the earth that the psychic being is active. It is only on the earth that the psychic being is active. Beyond that, the psychic being is not active. You see in the Puranas in India, the story of in the Puranas, the story of the gods and goddesses, where a god, particular god, if he wants to work in the world, he comes to the world and takes hold of a person. Always the story is like that a person is possessed by Indra, by or some other god. Why the story is like that? Because the god has to possess a person who is a psychic being to work in the world. Without the psychic being, the god cannot work in the world. So even a god has to possess a person to work through his psychic being. And the psychic being can only be active in the world. So the world is important. The earth consciousness is very important. Next slide. In Sri Aurobindo's worldview, the outer personality is formed at every birth by the interaction of the self with nature, constructed with the time spirit of that era, constructed along with the time spirit of that era, and deconstructed along with the individual subconscious after every lifespan. So this is natural. Of course, I am a psychiatrist now in 21st century. A psychiatrist 200 years back would have different values, would have different ideas. So this is very natural. And a psychiatrist 200 years afterwards will have different values, still different ideas. So this means that past life theories, which traces problems in one life to the surface personality of a past life, do not have value here. So you trace the problems of the surface personality of life to some past life, it doesn't have any value here. Of course, certain spectacular encounters described in past life therapies, maybe with vital beings or formations in the cosmic consciousness. That is not a question of the psychic being or not a question of the soul continuity. It is a one-off phenomenon, interaction with a vital being or formation in the cosmic consciousness. So they are not false. Of course, all of them are not false. They might be true. And when they are true, they are interactions with vital beings. Next one. Next slide. Hence, it is wrong to say that A is reborn as B. A is a personality organically distinct from B and cannot be said to have reincarnated from B. His mother says you would be only right if you said that the same line of consciousness uses both A and B as the instruments of his manifestation. The same line of consciousness uses both A and B as the instruments of his manifestation. This is a much better way of putting the thing forward. Instead of saying that A is reborn as B, because A is a personality organically distinct from B, and therefore you can correctly say that the same line of consciousness uses both A and B as its instruments. For example, a certain line of consciousness that explores music at a superconscious plane might support different musicians, say X, Y, and Z at different eras in history. But that doesn't mean that X is reborn as Y or Z. A certain line of consciousness exploring music originating at a superconscious plane might support different musicians, X, Y, Z at different points in history. But doesn't mean that X is born as Y and Z. Rather, X, Y, and Z have the capacity of manifesting certain higher order musical traditions through inspiration from the superconscious. But each composes in accordance with the demands of the time spirit Each has his own contemporary uniqueness. Each person has his own individuality. Each person has his own personality. Each person has his own uniqueness. But it is the same kind of consciousness they are manifesting. So you can see this. That this is a way of seeing things. Next slide. A psychic being, this is difficult. This is something very difficult to understand. That a psychic being that progressively perfects itself through successive births can come to a point where it can draw within itself a higher evolutionary being which doesn't evolve, which are the gods from the tribal planes. So a godly being can be drawn within oneself. A psychic being progressively perfects oneself, can lead its perfection to a point where it can draw an evolutionary being. And when so if such beings are drawn from the overmind plane, they are divine beings. And when this fusion occurs, the psychic being naturally gets magnified and can produce emanations. The psychic being can produce emanations. These beings have the power to produce emanations. That is, they project a power, a part of themselves which become independent, not duplicate. They project a part of themselves which become independent and goes into others to incarnate itself. So there can be 2 or 4 or 5 emanations. So this is very rare, but this is a possibility. That a psychic being which is progressively perfected can draw in itself an evolutionary being and become a divine being and can produce emanations. This is exceptional. This is not a common thing, but this can also happen. Next slide. What happens to the other parts of the being? We talked of the psychic being. With dissolution of physical form at death, all elements are dispersed. Exceptions occur. For example, in case of strong emotional attachment children have for parents, a part of the departed parental consciousness can get assimilated into the children. In case of strong emotional attachment our children have for parents, and a parent dies, and a part of the departed parental consciousness can get assimilated into their children. And if the subject had very strong mental formations, supported by the psychic being, their transcripts remain in the cosmic consciousness to influence future receptive minds.
I think your PowerPoint, Vladimir, just got reduced. Vladimir.
I didn't do anything
There
with
we go.
this.
If the subject has strong mental formations supported by the psychic being, the transcripts remain in the cosmic consciousness to influence future receptive minds. And if the subject has strong vital formations linked to the psychic being, their transcripts can in the cosmic consciousness inspire future generations. So you have to have very strong mental formations. You have to have very strong vital formations, and they have to be linked to the psychic being. It's not like that any mental formation will be there. They will be dissolved in the cosmic waste paper basket. If the mental formation is very strong, like Einstein's mental formation, no? And is supported by the psychic being, then that will remain. It will influence people. Or if the subject had a strong vital formation linked to the psychic being, something like Shivaji had, that is going to influence people. But otherwise, if it is not linked to the psychic being and if the formation is not strong, all these mental formations, they go to the cosmic waste paper basket. Next slide. But all subtle elements that we see in the cosmic consciousness do not represent soul elements. So disembodied vital fragments can persist in cosmic ignorance with maleficent effects. So this is an example of a boy who was autistic, 3 years old, autistic boy who was profoundly mentally retarded, and he couldn't speak anything except saying like that sound. He used to cry and used to produce sounds like and is profoundly mentally retarded. But when figures A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, cutouts of these figures were placed in front of him, he could pick up murder, M-U-R-D-E-R, murder, in sequence and arrange them. And then other things also he arranged. He arranged where did the murder occur. He used to select E-U-R-O-P-E in Europe. So he was murdered in Europe in past life. Of course, this is a mental retarded boy, severely autistic, severely retarded, doesn't have any speaking capacity, but he could do that. I had a video presentation of it, which I am unable to show today, but I have a video presentation of it. So that, how is it possible? How is it possible? It is not the memory traces carried by the psychic being, but a strong vital memory carried by a disembodied vital element that has made that subject an instrument for expressing its ideas. So a disembodied vital element has made that child a subject to as an instrument to express its ideas. So it is like that. Otherwise, you can't explain this phenomenon. Next slide. The mother also describes small vital entities which are formed by the decomposition of desires that have persisted after a man's death and retained their form, of imaginations that have remained coagulated and tried to manifest and reappear. So the decomposition of desires, which are formed from the decomposition of desires, small vital entities are formed from the decomposition of desires. And particularly she said that if a person before death, if he has not resolved his sexual conflicts, if a person before his death has not resolved his sexual conflicts, then these sexual desires remain in the atmosphere and they get attracted to people who are vulnerable. So people who are vulnerable, they always carry these vibrations around them. They always carry these vibrations around them. And some of the small beings of the vital world, when they see people playing at such things, automatic writing, spirit communication, they come and play. And as they are in a domain from where it is easy to read human thought, they tell you what you have in your head. So people get impressed. People who do automatic writing, people who do planchets, they get very impressed by what they are seeing, what they are doing, because they invite these vital entities. Most of the time they invite these vital entities. And these vital entities work, they do their work. The next slide. On spectacular past life events narrated by children and reported in newspapers versus specific memory flashes carried by the psychic being, the mother answered, the memories mentioned in newspapers are the memories of the vital being. When exceptionally it has come out of a body in order to enter another, that happens not frequently. She is talking about the psychic being. One is conscious of them when one is in conscious relationship with one psychic being. But the memories of the spectacular past life events narrated by children are vital memories, are vital memories, are memories of the vital being. So that is important differentiation between reincarnation in rebirth. Reincarnation is a psychic being that is important. And what memories will you remember are the flashes, which will come in flashes. That is important. This vital drama is not related with rebirth or reincarnation. It's just a vital drama, one-off drama at one point in time. Next slide. What is a ghost? What is a ghost? What we call ordinarily a ghost is sometimes a vital formation, reproducing the man's character and his surface life mannerisms. Like one of my friend, psychiatrist junior to me, he passed away suddenly, and his wife on the second day felt him and heard him telling where to find the keys of the cupboard and the keys of the locker, in which drawer to find. Otherwise, she would have been she was very young at that time. And they were many years back. They were both young, husband and wife. And the husband died suddenly. And the wife, the next day, she felt very concretely the presence of her husband. And the husband was telling her where to find the drawer keys, where to find the locker keys. So this is a vital formation. This is a vital formation. And sometimes a subtle physical prolongation of the surface mind shell. Sometimes it is a subtle physical prolongation of the surface mind shell. At best, it is a sheath of the life personality, which still remains in the front for some time after departure from body. The sheath of the life personality, which remains for some time, it remains after departure from the body, so that people can see the same person entering to the gate, entering to the room for some days. People see that. Next slide. So cosmicity implicit in the phenomenon of rebirth led Sri Aurobindo to prefer the term rebirth over the more familiar terms of transmigration, metempsychosis, and reincarnation. So Sri Aurobindo, the cosmicity implicit in the phenomenon of rebirth led Sri Aurobindo to prefer the term rebirth over reincarnation, transmigration, metempsychosis. The concept of the psychic being carrying impressionistic memory traces beyond the lifespan, heralding a trajectory of soul evolution, does correspond to the usual notions of does not correspond to the usual notions of transmigration and reincarnation, and surpasses the reward punishment paradigms of karma, and does not conform to the Buddhist theory where indefinite prolongation by reincarnation is considered to be a burden instead of a growth of consciousness that spirals through lifetimes. So it is unlike the Buddhist theory where the indefinite prolongation by reincarnation is considered to be a burden. Here it is not considered to be a burden. It is a growth of consciousness that is spiraling through many, many lives. It is a growth of consciousness that is spiraling through many, many lives that is important. And naturally, when one life, it has come to one life, it doesn't regress to a lower life form. A human being doesn't become an animal. A human being becomes a human being. A human being becomes a human being in next birth. He doesn't become an animal in the next birth. So it is an evolutionary growth. So that is an evolutionary growth that is spiraling through lives. And in the process of evolution, what has been achieved doesn't get denigrated into lower species. Next slide. Reincarnations of the mother and Sri Aurobindo should not be confused with the ordinary rebirth. Of course, they had reincarnations. We read about them. This is not a place for telling that story. The story is different. But just to remember that in ordinary rebirth, the soul had forgotten its divinity and has to climb back consciously to the source. And in the case of avatars, the soul is in full possession of divinity. So the reincarnation of mother and Sri Aurobindo should not be confused with ordinary rebirth. Next slide. Sri Aurobindo qualified the term rebirth as evolutionary rebirth. Because this is an evolutionary journey starting from the inconscious, traversing plant life, animal life to the human being. And the way of the spirit in its power is justified no longer as a term in futility, but the sum of works of a large spiritual will and wisdom. The large spiritual will and wisdom is controlling the whole thing. It is an evolutionary rebirth. And this evolutionary rebirth is being controlled by a large spiritual will and wisdom. The human spirit and the human soul and the cosmic spirit look into each other's eyes with noble and divine meaning. The human soul and the cosmic spirit look into each other's eyes. They are not separate. They are not separate. They are separate, but also they are not separate. They are separate and they are not separate. They come from the same source. The human soul and the cosmic spirit, they come from the same source. And they look into each other's eyes with noble and divine meaning. And the story doesn't end there. The next slide. Is there any alternative to physical dissolution of forms? The body consciousness can be worked upon. Instead of disintegrating backwards, the body is broken up in a forward movement. Now, this is difficult to understand. One can work on one's body consciousness. One can work on one's body consciousness, and that work can be taken to such a point that at death, the body doesn't break up backwards, disintegrate backwards, but the body is broken up in a forward movement. It's a conscious way of realigning the cells of the body, so the truth can persist while everything else is broken up and rebuilt. A conscious way of realigning the cells of the body. A conscious way of realigning the cells of the body. This is to be invoked during lifetime. This is to be worked upon during lifetime. Work upon on your body consciousness. This is a work that has to be done on the body consciousness. So the body consciousness can be worked upon. And so that when you work with the mind, you see, if you work with the mind, a mind like Einstein's mind, a mind like a famous philosopher's mind, a mind like mind of Socrates, a mind of Sri Aurobindo, they don't go away, they remain. They always remain there. The mind remains. The mind is strong, the mind remains. Similarly, the body can also remain if the body is worked upon, but we don't know the technique of working upon the body. We don't know to work on the body consciousness. The body consciousness can be worked upon so that the realignment of the cells of the body, so that the truth can persist while everything else is broken up, can be taken up. It can be broken up in a forward movement instead of sinking back to death, and rebuilt in a constant aspiration to follow the progressive movement of the divine truth. So this is possible. This is possible. The body is broken up in a forward movement. This is very difficult, but this is a sadhana of the future. This is very difficult, but this is the sadhana of the future, the sadhana of the body, where the body consciousness, you have worked upon the mind, you have worked about your vital, one can work upon one's body consciousness. Next slide. The Jivatma, or the central being. What happens to the Jivatma? The Jivatma is the Amsha of the divine, Amsha of some Devata, means his origination in the overmind archetypes. It is simultaneously universal and individual. Jivatma is simultaneously universal and individual. You see, like, if you fail to understand this, you just remember the folds of a curtain. The folds of a curtain are all different, but they are all from the same curtain. It's the same curtain with different folds. Each fold is one Jivatma, but each fold is connected with the other fold. His realization gives silence, wideness, feeling of wideness, mastery, purity, universality in individuality. Universality in individuality. So this is what the Jivatma gives. And the psychic being is not a portion of the Jivatma, but is projection in a different poise. Is a projection of the Jivatma in the evolutionary being. The psychic being is a projection of the Jivatma in the evolutionary being. Now the next slide. What happens to the Jivatma? Sri Aurobindo explains that the personality of the central being of the Jivatma remains as a mode of being. Remains as a mode of being. It does not disappear with the demise of a subject. The first modes of being were the light, life, love, and bliss, and truth. In that case, there will be innumerable modes of being, but this is permitted. As Sri Aurobindo speaks of the enjoyment and possession of the one by the multitude of the multitude by the multitude. So such a play must be an innumerable diversity, innumerable. So the Jivatma persists as a mode of being. The next slide. The next slide. It is traditionally believed that the individual soul dissolved. No, the slide before. The individual soul dissolved in the spirit. Sri Aurobindo has a different view. The individual retains his uniqueness as a psychic being joins the Jivatma in a new denouement. So it was originally believed that the individual soul dissolved in the spirit. Individual soul dissolved in the Jivatma, Jivatma dissolved in the Paramatma. Always in India it is believed that the individual soul dissolved in the Jivatma dissolved in the Paramatma. Sri Aurobindo doesn't believe that. Sri Aurobindo believes that the psychic being retains his uniqueness and joins with the Jivatma in a new venture. So it doesn't dissolve with in the Jivatma, but it joins with the Jivatma. The psychic being retains his individuality and joins with the Jivatma, but that joining becomes that takes place in the supermind. It results in the supramental personality becoming incarnate in the physical body. It results in the supramental personality becoming incarnate in the physical body. The next slide. The mother, in a powerful spiritual vision, had the sudden realization in 1970, as late as 1970, she had this sudden realization that the psychic being would be the template for the new creation. The psychic being, which is the one which will materialize and become the supramental being. It gives a continuity to evolution that she had, because she was thinking, what will be the template of the new creation? Not the inconscience. Not the inconscience is the template of the present creation. But the inconscious contains all opposite things of the superconscious. All the opposite things it contains. It contains falsehood, it contains death, it contains injustice, it contains darkness, it contains ignorance, and all these things come into the evolution. But the supramental being has to have a different template for his origin. And that what she was thinking for years and years she was thinking, and suddenly it came to her that it is a psychic being which will be the new template for the new creation, which will materialize. The psychic being will materialize and become the supramental being. So that will give a continuity to evolution. The next slide. The next slide. The psychic being is the dedicate of the unborn spirit projected into the manifestation and does not carry the stain, the imperfection, the falsehood of ignorance, and ignorance and disillusion, which are the hallmarks of inconscience, because it comes directly from the jivatma. It doesn't come from the inconscience. The psychic being doesn't evolve from the inconscience. It comes from the jivatma, and therefore it doesn't carry the stain of imperfection, of falsehood, of ignorance. It is therefore the most appropriate template for the new creation. So the next slide. And the old creation started with the ego as an nodal point around which the amorphous substance of matter was organized to produce the individuality. The old creation, they started with the ego. With the inconscience, all these things gathered around something which became the ego. Which gathered around a framework, and that framework became the ego. And the new creation has to be organized around the psychic being with the material substance thoroughly transmuted and transformed. Therefore, it is not a crucified but a glorified body that will save the world. It is not a crucified but a glorified body. So long, up to 1957, up to 1956, when the supramental had descended, it was Christ's crucified body, which was the savior of mankind. But with Sri Aurobindo's supramental coming down and the mother coming, allowing it to come down and visualizing it, she had made the glorified body as the savior of the next world. The glorified body will be the savior of the next world, which will replace the crucified body. So long it was the crucified body which was the savior of the world. Now it will be the glorified body which will be the savior of the world. The next point. So the new body which will be free from oddities, excessive fat in the female buttocks and breast are oddities which will not be there in the new body. Organs will be centers of transmission of energy. Usual process of procreation will be changed by supraphysical means, and the beginning has been made already. And the features of the new body will be lightness, adaptability, plasticity, luminosity. Lightness, adaptability, plasticity, luminosity. So all these will be the features of the new body. The next slide. The mother also speculated there would be intermediary beings that would not last very long before the advent of the supramental being. So as there are intermediary beings that were between chimpanzee and man didn't suddenly spring forth from chimpanzee. There were intermediary beings between them. So between the human being and the supramental new being, there will be intermediary beings. So there will be intermediary beings. That is what we have to now go forward to. We have to look forward now to become intermediary beings. Next slide. And this is the last slide. So that is the aspiration for the new creation. What we can do, aspire for the new creation. A real new age integral sadhana can take up the issue of rebirth in a new paradigm. So what we want to be, we want to be born again. Born again for what? To be a great sadhak, to be a big doctor, to be a big engineer, to be a big philanthropist, to be a big philosopher. Not for that. We want to give ourselves to the divine. We want to sacrifice ourselves to the mother For that, what we can do, we can aspire to increase the psychic memories. You see, the psychic memory is a memory that is not connected with the unconscious. All our memories are connected with the unconscious. The psychic memory is the memory that is not connected with the unconscious. So every day, in 24 hours a day, at least 1 second, you can have a pure moment. You can aspire when we sit in for meditation, you can aspire to a psychic being to have one memory which will be a true psychic memory, which is free from the inconscient, which is free from the unconscious. If you do it 100 times, one time you will succeed. Maybe if you do it 100 days, one day we will succeed. So aspire to increase the psychic memories. In meditation, aspire to increase the psychic memories. Because you see, the psychic memories, how much psychic memories do we have? If a person of 50 years is asked, how many very impressionistic memories do you remember? Memories which leave the deepest imprints on your consciousness. Memories which leave the deepest imprints on your consciousness. How many memories can you recollect? A person will not be able to tell much. 3, 4, 5, 10 is far off. You ask yourselves at the age of 50 years, how many memories which have the deepest imprint on your soul do you remember? You will not be able to remember many memories. 3, 4, 5. So increasing that memory, sitting down in meditation, concentrating on the psychic being, and aspiring for one moment in 24 hours, one moment at least, to be free from the unconscious, to be free from the grip of the inconscient. If you just aspire for that, just aspire for one memory, for memory of 1 second that you are free from the unconscious, free from the inconscient, that is enough. But of course, if you do it 100 times, at least once we can succeed. And so these memories will be available as viable transcripts. And then secondly, work on our body consciousness to build the subtle body of physical elements that outlast the lifespan. So when we are conscious of our body, when we work on our body consciousness, we are preparing our cells. We are preparing our cells so the subtle cells will remain in the subtle physical. Our subtle cells, not our gross cells. The gross cells will, of course, go away into dust, go away into fire, but the subtle cells will remain. And the subtle cells will remain in the subtle physical. They will remain in the subtle consciousness. So with these two raw material in hand, increase in psychic memory transcripts, and an increase in subtle cells in the body, in the subtle consciousness, Mother will have enough raw material to work for her new creation, to work for her intermediary beings. So we can have our own aspiration to be a big doctor in next life, to be a big philanthropist in next life, to be a future world leader. All these things are okay, but we can also, some of us may think to offer ourselves to the divine, to allow ourselves to be used by the divine for the new creation. That will be a perfect tribute in sadhana to Mother and Sri Aurobindo. I end with this.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was wonderful, actually. The fullness of the vision of the work which is done. There are several questions here for you, and we can cover some of them. This building constantly strong mental and vital connected to the psychic, which will result in the increasing the psychic reservoir in the evolution of species. And this is an amazing topic. So Sri Aurobindo has the line in Savitri, what soul envisions is made the world. It is exactly that, influence of the soul on the mental and vital, and from that material the world is made and evolves. I wanted also to make one remark on that, what you said about blindfolded God. And it's quite interesting because in the Rig Veda, the gods do not see man. They hear him only. And this is something was always puzzling me. You will never find the gods in the Rig Veda seeing man. They always hear him only. They don't see him. And there's something about it to think deeply. So, and karma as a sacrifice. Of course, in the Veda, karma is the sacrifice, is the charging by the spiritual presence, the material which has to be charged and changed. It's an ongoing sacrifice. And every karma is considered to be this, and not something which is later kind of translated in terms of influence on us. Of course, it will be our material with which we will deal. So, but the very action of the spirit upon the material is karma. So, and then it drifted into another dimension. So these are the thoughts coming from your presentation. There are more questions here, so I will read some of you to answer. Can one aspire in this life that in all future lives, whoever and whatever circumstances we are born into, we remain always connected to the Mother in Sri Aurobindo? Thank you, Dr. Basu.
Of course, you can aspire. You can have this aspiration. And we should have this aspiration. We can have this aspiration and we should have this aspiration.
Yeah. Is the Purusha or being is the same as psychic being? How to allow the psychic to shape the body, vital and mind?
The psychic being is a Purusha, the Chaitya Purusha. So it is a Purusha. It is a Chaitya Purusha. But the Purusha is a very complex concept. But the psychic being is also a Purusha. And the psychic being works to the instruments of the body, vital and mind. They are the instruments to which the psychic being works. So they have to be developed separately. And they have to be, after they have developed separately, and the inner being, they have to be brought forward around the psychic being. They have to be brought forward around the psychic being so that the psychic being can influence them. But the body, vital, and the mind have to be worked upon separately. And their work cannot be done in the outer being. For that work, one has to work on the inner body, on the inner vital, on the inner mind, in the inner being.
Yeah, thank you so much. If Jayashri would like to say something or to share thoughts or to ask, and HP, would you like to say something?
Doctor, can you give a little follow-up explanation on how do you create psychic memory and how do you become aware of the psychic memory with our surface mind?
With our surface mind, is very difficult to have the psychic memory unless the surface being is fused with the inner being. When the inner being fuses with the outer being, then it is possible. But before that, one has to work on one's inner being, one's inner mind, inner physical, inner vital. And for the psychic being, as I said, that when we sit in meditation for the psychic being, we have to meditate that at least one moment today should be free from the unconscious, from the inconscient, because all our memories are linked with the unconscious. Usual memories are linked with the unconscious. To aspire, we have to aspire that at least one moment should be free from the unconscious. That aspiration that has to be carried in the psychic being. That aspiration will work. That aspiration will work. If it is done 100 times, at least once it will work. And like that, the psychic memories will increase.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank Dr. Basu for a very profound, a very, very profound presentation on the psychic. We came to know so many aspects, about rebirth, reincarnation. I had just one small observation to make, maybe ask this question, is that how does the subconscious The subconscious generally we feel is a reservoir of all our past lives and memories and habits. And Sri Aurobindo is saying that the subconscious disintegrates with this lifespan. It is not carried across to the next incarnation. That for me is something, a new knowledge. Then what is the subconscious in this lifetime? Isn't it already from past lives?
The past life things that they remain below the subconscious, they remain in the unconscious and they remain in the cosmic consciousness. So they exceed the subconscious. The subconscious is for this life.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I also just had a really quick question, Dr. Basu. I've heard you in several of the New Perspective webinars and also the Namahas workshops reference this cosmic wastebasket. Could you speak a little bit as to where this wastebasket exists, or if it does exist, does it dissolve over time? Can it influence us or the psychic being? Just to clarify a bit more in my mind about this cosmic wastebasket, please.
Waste paper basket of the cosmic consciousness, that is a word that I use because things that are of value are carried by the psychic being. Things that are of no value are just, that is a figurative way of saying that they are scattered in the cosmic waste paper basket. That is, they are scattered in the cosmic consciousness, the lower part of the cosmic consciousness, which Jung calls the collective unconscious, is a domain where the cosmic waste paper basket resides. Jung's collective unconscious is the domain where it resides. So these things are there in the lower part of the cosmic consciousness. They remain there, but they don't influence the future lives.
I have a similar kind of a question what Radha had. Sri Aurobindo somewhere mentions that once experience lived, thing has the right to be forever. And this is most probably that case where it goes either into the cosmic memory, which is useful, which will influence, or into that basket inconscient. So it cannot be easily decomposed. It cannot be easily removed. It will somehow be somewhere. Yes, and
yes, it remains in the lower part of the collective unconscious.
This is an amazing thing. Especially Mother mentions this in her memories. She says, "You can't believe what comes to me now in 71. The memories, the demands from her youth to buy something in Paris, and they're still there. There's those formations. Once they were lived, they're still coming back, knocking onto her doors to come in." So it was shocking me to think of this, that everything which was experienced by us somehow is there in that reservoir of cosmos and can be reactivated in our consciousness. Yeah. So here there are two more questions to you. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam, is it referring to psychic being in the Gita?
This you can answer.
Well, Ishvara...
This is a cosmic consciousness. This is talking about the cosmic consciousness. Ishwar Sarva Bhutanam is talking about the cosmic consciousness, that the cosmos and the individual, they are the same. Right. The Sarva Bhutanam is that including the cosmos and the individual. So they are the same thing. And of course, the psychic, about Sandeep Poddar's question, the psychic is the divine presence within us, but the psychic is the evolutionary soul. So that it evolves, that means it progresses. It progresses through many lives. Through many lives it progresses until it becomes a psychic being.
Yeah. In the Gita, by the way, Sri Krishna says that he is Adhiyajna, the one who is located within the soul. So there is an element, the core of the individual soul of the psychic is that Ishvara, as you rightly said, that universal or transcendental Purushottama is present in the individual form. And this is of course, the most important message of the Gita. and Sri Aurobindo, definitely. So thank you so much. It was a wonderful treat. It actually made our day today. Is to reconnect with these topics and to look at the soul as this evolutionary journey in the cosmic, environment. We are here charging the cosmos with our experiences. We are enriching it and we are influenced by it, but we are free from it. Yes, we can really always engage with it at our will if we want to. I had one more question, but most probably time does not permit, about Mother creating the immortal mental and vital being for herself. And she mentions this in Agenda, that she already formed them totally as immortal beings and let them be on the side while she was working on the physical directly with the supramental light. And that is the most puzzling and the most interesting topic to, so that those formations will stay and they will have memory for the next rebirth, so to say, reincarnation. And so she will remember everything in the fullness, in the vital and mental formation, most probably. Is it this? What do you think about it?
Yes, of course, I think what you are saying.
But it is
It's
very
difficult to
rare.
understand the things,
Impossibly
but
rare.
we can assume that this is what she meant.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Dr. Basu. Like Jayashri mentioned, many new thoughts and ideas that came forward through your talk today. Very rich and deeply appreciative. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste.